Imagine for a moment a quiet night, when the sky is covered by a dark expanse dotted with faint stars that cannot pierce the dense darkness. The night air feels fresh, cold yet soothing, carrying the scent of wet earth, leaves, and distant fire. In this silence, early humans sit or crouch, watching the first fire burn, dancing with a warm yet gentle light. Fire is not merely a source of warmth or a tool for cooking, but more than that, it becomes the first witness of human memory, the place where the earliest stories are born and told, even before any words are written. They realize that every spark rising into the air, every slowly moving wisp of smoke, is something to be observed, understood, and valued. Because the first fire brings both light and a mystery that cannot be fully explained. Early humans observed how fire affected the surrounding environment. Light reflecting on their own faces, on rocks, on the shimmering water surface, and on the shadows of trees. Every movement of a spark brought a different sensation, making them aware that this world is full of subtle interactions between light, darkness, inanimate objects, and life. Children sat close to adults, their eyes watching the fire with a mix of fear and awe, gradually learning the rhythm of light and dark. Understanding that this world is not only a physical place to live, but also a space where their earliest memories and experiences are born and developed. There was a calm that could only be found in the stillness of night around the fire. Adults sometimes spoke softly, recounting their experiences in flat tones, as if emphasizing the fact that this world must be observed and felt, not directly changed. Children learned that in silence they could hear the story of nature, detect subtle changes, and sense the difference between hot and cold, near and distant sounds, moving and still shadows. Every moment around the first fire was a lesson about life, about time, about how human memory began to form, and how the first human stories were born in quiet and gentle light. The first fire brought more than the physical. It sparked awareness, awakened curiosity, and gave early humans the chance to begin understanding their relationship with nature and with one another. Every crackling piece of wood, every spark floating into the air became the first symbol of human consciousness of time, cause and effect, and growing observation. In that silence, they learned that the world was full of mysteries, that fire was both friend and teacher, illuminating the secrets of the world and opening a space for humans to start storing memories that would be passed from generation to generation. And as the night deepened, as the wind whispered among the trees, and the sound of a distant river reached their ears, early humans sat quietly, letting the fire dance, letting shadows move, and letting their hearts absorb all these first experiences. They did not yet know that what they saw and felt would become part of history, part of collective human memory, part of a story that would one day be retold in words, paintings, or songs. That night, the first fire became the starting point of the long human journey of remembering, understanding, and feeling the world. The first fire flickered in the silent night, reflecting warm light on the faces of early humans sitting around it. Every small spark seemed to dance with the movement of the wind, altering shadows on the ground and on the shimmering water surface. They sat quietly, letting their minds flow with the shifting light, feeling the warmth spreading from their bodies into the cold air around them. Children watched the fire with half-closed eyes, gradually learning to understand that this light was more than just fire. It was the keeper of the first memories, a space where human experiences and stories began to embed themselves into memory as if writing history without words. Around the fire, adults sometimes spoke in flat tones, noting their observations about the night, animal sounds, the crackling of burning wood, and the movement of shadows in the forest. They did not seek to frighten, but merely to share facts and experiences, as if teaching children to appreciate every detail seen and heard. Children observed closely, feeling calm within the silence, learning that careful observation was the first window into understanding the wider world. Every flicker, every glimmer, every moving shadow became the first lesson about the interconnectedness of humans, nature, and greater unseen forces. The night around the fire was also filled with subtle sounds previously unnoticed. Rustling leaves, the flowing river, and occasional nocturnal animal calls became part of a gentle symphony of nature. Early humans sat still, letting their ears capture this rhythm, sensing that the world was not only made of tangible objects, but also of experiences to be felt, sounds to be understood, and patterns to be observed. Children learn to connect sound, light, and shadow, understanding that the earliest human experiences were not only physical, but also emotional and intuitive, and that every moment in this night was part of a slowly forming history. The firelight provided both security and mystery. They realized that beyond the darkness, among the trees and winding river, lay a world not fully seen, where creatures and natural phenomena might exist but always remain hidden. Children gradually learned that fear is part of learning, curiosity is a tool for understanding, and that tonight, with all its calm and mystery, was their first teacher about life, nature, and the relationship between humans and the greater world. As the night deepened, silence became a gentle companion. Children slept near the fire, while adults remained vigilant, listening to every sound, noting every shift of light, and appreciating the moving shadows around them. They understood that what happened tonight, the fire burning, shadows dancing, forest sounds, was the starting point of humanity's long journey to remember, understand, and feel the world. The first fire was not only a source of warmth, 'twas a witness to the first human memories, a light marking the beginning of stories, history, and experiences that would be passed down from generation to generation. That year is believed to be long before the first written records appeared, when humans still depended entirely on nature, fire, and collective memory passed down orally. The valley they inhabited was hidden among towering mountains, steep cliffs, and dense forests, creating natural boundaries almost impossible to penetrate by other creatures or even humans from outside. The winding river flowing through the valley provided water and life, but also brought mystery, as the shadows of trees covering the water surface and echoes from high cliffs could create illusions of movement that seemed alive. The night in this valley was so silent, yet full of subtle signs of life, making every step, every sound, and every movement require careful observation. As night fell, a thin mist covered the land, forming a gray curtain that slowly drifted among trees and rocks. Early humans sat near the fire, watching how light and shadow interacted with the mist, forming patterns that sometimes appeared as distant giants. They realized that this world was not always as it seemed, that perception could deceive, and that the ability to understand the environment through careful observation was key to survival. Children watched these shadows with curiosity, feeling a gentle fear yet deep awe. Learning that mystery was part of life that must be accepted without full explanation. The forest surrounding the valley felt alive, full of unseen yet tangible energy. The calls of night birds, small animals moving beneath leaves, and the wind passing through gaps in the trees became part of the language of nature to be understood. Adults showed children how to read subtle signs, glimmers on the water indicating movement of creatures below, broken branches signaling the steps of large animals, or echoing sounds hinting at open spaces in the distance. Every element of nature had meaning, and every movement or sound became part of experiences that shaped their collective memory. Additionally, the valley's location held stories difficult to explain. Occasionally, faint sounds emerged from the dense forest, or shadows passed in the distance that could not be tracked directly. Early humans understood that this primeval world was full of phenomena that could not be fully explained, and that curiosity, patience, and careful observation were ways to survive and learn. Children began to realize that their experiences were not only about seeing and hearing, but also about sensing unseen presence. Understanding that nature had many layers, some real and some mysterious, all of which must be respected. In the middle of the night, as the fire burned dimly and the wind carried the scent of earth and wet leaves, early humans sat quietly, absorbing everything happening around them. The river shimmered under starlight. Tree shadows moved slowly with the wind, and the forest sent subtle sounds as reminders that they were only a small part of a larger, unseen system. Children closed their eyes briefly, letting shadows, light, and sounds fill their imagination, understanding that the year, the location, and the conditions of this valley were the stage for the long human journey of observing, remembering, and understanding the world. That night, mystery was not only frightening, but also taught calmness and respect for the greater nature surrounding them. The night in the ancient valley carried a silence deeper than words could explain. Only the sounds of nature could be heard, the wind whispering through the trees, the rustle of leaves falling slowly, and occasionally the sound of stones being shifted by nocturnal animals moving in the distance. Every second seemed to emphasize that they lived in a world full of secrets, where every sound, shadow, and light held meaning that could only be understood through careful observation. Adults sat with flat expressions around the fire, sharing their experiences and observations of the night without drama, merely presenting observable facts. Children learned to listen attentively, feeling the calm flowing alongside gentle curiosity, understanding that mystery is part of life that must be accepted. A thin mist floated above the ground, covering the contours of the land and the river surface with a soft gray blanket, making tree and cliff shadows appear like slowly moving figures in the distance. Firelight reflected on the water, creating changing glimmers that seemed to dance with the misty shadows. Early humans sat still, observing the interaction of light and dark, understanding that the world was more complex than it appeared at first glance. They learned to interpret subtle signs, repeated sounds, unusual leaf movements, and shifting patterns of light, all becoming clues about the presence of other creatures or changes in the environment. Children gradually absorbed this learning, realizing that the ability to observe and sense was the first tool for survival. Along the winding river, sparks from the fire reflected on wet stones, creating shadows that appeared alive. Adults showed children how to read subtle changes. Different ripples in the water indicated strong currents below. Glimmers on stones might signal the movement of unseen creatures, and faint sounds of broken leaves could indicate large animals passing far away. Every element of nature was regarded as a teacher, every sign as a lesson, and children learned that the world held secrets that would never be fully revealed. They began to understand that the experiences of this night would become part of a collective memory shaping how humans would understand the world in the future. The dense forest surrounding the valley felt alive with unseen energy, yet tangible to those who could sense it. The calls of night birds, the steps of small animals, and the wind's sigh through the trees became a language only interpretable with attention and patience. Early humans understood that their presence in this world was temporary, that they were only a small part of a larger system, and that the ability to observe, interpret, and respect their environment was at the core of their life experience. Children felt a gentle calm, accompanied by curiosity and a hint of fear. Learning that mystery was a companion teaching them about life, nature, and relationships with other creatures around them. As night deepened, shadows around the fire grew longer and more complex, forming shapes that seemed to dance on their own. Early humans sat quietly, letting their eyes follow the movement of shadows, letting their minds flow, and allowing their hearts to feel the rhythm of a night full of mystery. They realized that this world was not only a place to live physically, but also a space to understand, feel, and remember. Children slowly closed their eyes, letting their imagination wander freely, understanding that tonight, in this hidden valley, under the starlight and warm first fire, human history and memory began to form in subtle yet enduring ways. In this ancient valley, time seemed to move more slowly, giving early humans space to absorb every detail of the world around them. Large stones scattered along the riverbank stood as silent witnesses to changing seasons, heavy rains, and morning dew dripping from tree leaves. Early humans walked among stones and trees, feeling the texture of the earth beneath their feet, the scent of wet soil, and the sounds of nocturnal animals moving in the distance. Every movement, every breath, and every sound became part of an experience to be remembered and shared, not through writing, but through oral stories and shared observation. The night sky above the valley appeared limitless, adorned with thousands of dim stars, some twinkling, some seemingly still. Adults taught children that the sky was a map, that stars and shadows held their own stories, and that every sign in the sky could provide clues about seasons, time, or possible dangers. Children learned to watch the sky attentively, sensing the connection between the earth, the fire, and distant celestial bodies. Understanding that early human experience was not limited to physical interaction, but also involved subtle observation and deep reflection. The thin mist flowing between trees and cliffs, added a layer of mystery, making shadows appear alive, as if the forest concealed creatures unseen by human eyes. Children sat near adults, observing with fear and awe, learning that mystery is a part of life experience. They realized that the world had many layers, some clearly visible, some hidden, and that to understand it, humans needed to observe, sense, and respect everything that might not be explainable with words. Around the fire, conversations took place in calm, flat tones. Adults recounted their experiences simply, noting observations about animals, wind changes, and natural sounds. Children learned to listen, absorbing every detail, and felt that these experiences were not mere entertainment, but the first lessons about the world, life, and human interaction with nature. They began to understand that the ability to observe, interpret, and remember was at the heart of humanity's long journey. And that tonight, in this hidden valley, all these experiences became part of a collective memory to be passed down. As the night deepened, the firelight reflected on stones and the river's surface, creating slowly moving patterns of light and shadow. Children watched the fire and shadows with half-closed eyes, allowing their imagination to fill the gaps between light and dark. They felt a gentle calm mixed with curiosity and a hint of fear, understanding that tonight was the first space where humans learned to remember, observe, and feel the world. In this ancient valley, time, location, and the mysterious historical conditions set the stage for stories that would be born, becoming part of humanity's long journey in building memory, understanding, and connection with nature and with one another. The first morning in the valley began with a thin mist slowly lifted by the low sunlight. Early humans rose from their sleep near the fire that still held glowing embers, feeling the residual warmth and the faint scent of slowly burning wood. Children clung to adults, learning through observation about the routines they followed, from preparing the fire for cooking, fetching water from the river, to gathering wood and food. Every movement was carried out carefully, following the rhythm of nature understood through years of experience. Even though those years were unwritten and preserved only in collective memory passed down through oral stories, they walked through the forest with light steps, observing dew-soaked leaves, hearing the sounds of waking insects, and interpreting animal tracks in the damp earth. Children learned to recognize these patterns, understanding that every track and movement in the forest held meaning and provided information about the presence of other creatures, environmental conditions, and potential dangers. Adults demonstrated meticulousness in every action, conveying their knowledge in calm and flat tones, allowing children to absorb information without pressure. Understanding that this experience formed the foundation of learning that would never be written, yet remained strong and enduring. By the winding river, sunlight pierced the mist, dancing on the calm water's surface. Early humans used this moment to gather fish, wash tools, and observe the reflections of moving light on the water. Children learned to interpret light and shadow, understanding that the world consisted not only of tangible objects, but also of phenomena that could be observed and studied. They realized that early human experience was not only about physical survival, but also about learning to read the world through subtle observation, patience, and awareness of the connection between humans, nature, and unseen greater forces. The forest around the valley held many secrets. Occasionally, the sound of broken leaves, fallen branches, or sighing wind made shadows seem alive, as if giants were watching from afar. Early humans did not always know what emerged from the mist and shadows, yet they learned to remain calm, observe, and sense unseen presence. Children learned that fear did not always mean danger, but was also part of understanding the broader world. Every night and morning experience became part of collective memory, shaping the way early humans understood nature, time, and relationships between beings. Their daily activities also involved interaction with simple yet essential objects. Stones for grinding seeds, wood for the fire, leaves and tree bark for protection. All were treated with care and respect. Children learned to see the value in each object, understanding that their existence in the world depended on the ability to use resources wisely, respect the environment, and store knowledge in collective memory. Nights and mornings in this valley created a harmonious calm and observational pattern of life, while also teaching that early human experience was a combination of physical, emotional, and intuitive understanding. As the day progressed, early humans continued their activities with full awareness of their surroundings. Every step, sound, and movement was observed and understood. Every natural phenomenon became a lesson, and every experience became part of the collective memory that shaped human culture and understanding. Children, with eyes half closed from the sun and morning fatigue, began to sense the connection between their actions and the world around them, learning that life was not merely about survival, but also about understanding, observing, and feeling. In this ancient valley, daily activity was the first teacher, guiding humans to learn about the world, memory, and mysteries flowing alongside time. The day in the ancient valley continued with a calm and almost ritualistic rhythm. Early humans spent their time on various activities that, although seemingly simple, were full of meaning and purpose. They carefully lit fires using stones and dry wood, feeling the sparks as a symbol of mastery over unseen forces of nature. Children watched with eyes full of awe and mild fear, realizing that fire was not only a source of warmth and food, but also a symbol of human ability to remember, create, and understand the world. By the river, some adults fished using simple techniques, employing sticks and nets made from plant fibers. They observed the water, fish movements, and sounds from the riverbed, learning to read the hidden patterns of life beneath the seemingly calm surface. Children tried to imitate these movements, feeling the cold water on their hands, understanding that every living being has a place and role in the world, and that grasping these patterns was part of a larger lesson about nature's order. The surrounding forest carried a mysterious aura. Occasionally, the sound of broken branches, leaves swept by the wind, or the breath of nocturnal animals created illusions of movement that could be frightening. Yet adults taught children to remain calm and observe. They learned that fear could be a tool for learning, that awareness of the environment was key to survival, and that every experience, both pleasant and frightening, became part of the collective memory shaping human culture and understanding. Within the forest, early humans discovered fruits, roots, and wild edible plants while carefully avoiding poisonous ones. Children learned to recognize colors, textures, and smells indicating safety or danger. Every step on the ground, every object taken, and every simple decision became an exercise in deep observation, teaching that the world was full of hidden truths behind seemingly safe surfaces. They began to understand that daily experiences were not merely for survival, but also for learning to comprehend nature. As mysteries, appreciate life and build collective memory to be passed down. Moreover, early humans took time to observe the sky, stars, and moving clouds above them. Children learned to connect celestial phenomena with changes on the earth, realizing that the rhythms of the sky were closely linked to life below their feet. Every observation was considered important, and every experience stored in memory became part of a larger structure of understanding. They understood that the world was not only a physical place to live, but also a space full of symbols, signs, and mysteries waiting to be observed, felt, and remembered. The sun began its ascent, and shadows of trees and stones gradually shifted, teaching early humans about the concept of time derived from nature's observation. Children sensed the changes in light, warmth, and sound, learning to relate these phenomena to the activities of humans and animals around them. They realized that the world was not only about what was visible, but also about the relationships between living beings, objects, and interconnected phenomena. In this ancient valley, every day was a quiet teacher, and every experience became a lesson about the world, life, and the endless flow of mystery. In the brightening morning, early humans gathered in an open area near the river to divide their daily tasks. Adults guided the children patiently, showing how to utilize every available resource, from stones to grind seeds, wood to build temporary shelters, to leaves and tree bark to shield themselves from rain or cold. Every movement was carried out with a calm rhythm, almost like an unheard dance, yet full of meaning. Children learned not only from direct instruction, but also from observing how adults interacted with the environment and with each other. They observed the signs around them: animal tracks, water sounds, and wind movements through the trees, and gradually understood that every phenomenon had meaning and could serve as a clue. Children learn to read these natural signs carefully, realizing that this skill was not merely for survival, but also for building a collective memory that would form the foundation of human knowledge and culture. Adults conveyed simple yet important facts, such as large animals usually avoiding the river during daytime, or that certain smells could indicate the presence of food or danger. Meanwhile, some adults began preparing food from the river and forest harvests. Fish were cleaned, seeds were ground, and plant roots cooked with care. Children imitated these actions, feeling the textures of ingredients, their aroma and temperature, learning to appreciate every step required for survival. They also began to realize that every action had consequences, that carelessness could lead to failure or danger, and that these daily experiences formed the basis of a broader understanding of the world. The surrounding forest held a gentle yet unsettling mystery. The sound of broken branches, shifting wind, or shadows moving in the distance created a subtle curiosity, teaching children that the world was not always predictable. They learned that attentiveness, patience, and the ability to sense the unseen were essential aspects of life. Adults spoke in flat tones, sharing observations without dramatization. allowing children to internalize lessons through direct experience and observation. Social activities also began to take shape. Children learned to cooperate, share tasks, and understand the importance of collaboration within the community. They observed adult interactions, how decisions were made, and how minor conflicts were resolved calmly. All these experiences, though seemingly simple, taught them about relationships, hierarchy, and the importance of empathy and awareness toward others. Every movement, word, and action was carefully observed, forming behavioral patterns to be passed down through generations. As the sun rose higher, the valley was filled with warm light, shadows shifted, and natural sounds became clearer. Early humans continued their activities with full awareness, observing every change, learning to adapt to nature's rhythm and storing these experiences in collective memory. Children, though tired and full of curiosity, began to understand that today, daily activities, observations, and social interactions were their first teachers about life, mystery, and human memory. In this ancient valley, every second, every step, every sound became part of the narrative that would shape how humans understand the world in the future. Along the winding riverbank, early humans observed the movements of animals coming to drink or search for food. They noticed patterns of behavior in birds perching on branches, deer crossing the meadows, and fish swimming near the water's surface. Children were taught to observe movements, sounds, and subtle signs indicating the presence of other creatures. They learned that patience was key, that calm observation provided valuable information, and that every experience with animals taught them about life cycles and the interconnectedness of living beings. Some animals appeared tame but alert, while others moved quickly and unpredictably. Children watched in awe as adults interpreted these signs and made precise decisions, such as approaching the river slowly or avoiding suspicious tracks. They learned that the world was full of riddles, that every movement carried meaning, and that careful observation was part of deep learning. In fact, the animal world also held hidden truths that were not always explainable, such as missing prey tracks, cries echoing through the forest, or predator traces concealed in the undergrowth. In the forest surrounding the valley, sunlight pierced the leaf canopy, creating ever-changing patterns of light and shadow. Children learned to interpret these patterns, realizing that the world was not only seen on the surface, but also through subtle, transient phenomena. Adults demonstrated that shadows and light could serve as clues about time, the location of animals, or environmental conditions. They understood that these experiences taught humans to look deeper, to connect observations with prior experiences, and to build a richer, more complex collective memory. Interactions with animals also became a lesson in courage and vigilance. Children learned that fear was a natural part of life, and that observing without haste allowed them to understand the world. They noticed that some animals acted as warnings, such as birds suddenly flying away or startling footsteps. Every sign in nature taught them about the relationship between human actions and natural responses, reinforcing a deep sense of connection with the environment. Early humans also paid attention to subtler signs, such as changes in air scent, soil moisture, or wind direction. Children were taught to interpret these phenomena as part of a broad natural language, a language that could not be heard but could be felt through attention and experience. They learned that the world was not merely a physical place for survival, but also a space to build gentle and observational understanding of life and the mysteries surrounding them. All these experiences, both visible and hidden, became part of the collective memory, teaching early humans to feel, understand, and respect the environment around them. As the day moved toward noon, early humans became increasingly skilled at observing animal behavior and changing natural phenomena. Children began to perceive the order and disorder in nature. Understanding that the world was full of mysteries, not always directly explainable. They learned that life was a combination of direct experience, careful observation, and respect for the unseen. In this ancient valley, interactions with animals, nature observation, and daily experiences formed the foundation of human memory, laying the groundwork for future generations to understand the world with awe, calm, and profound mystery. The midday in the ancient valley brought a slow but significant change in light. The sun climbed high, warming the earth, leaves, and the bodies of early humans moving among the trees. They used this time to explore their surroundings, observing the scattered flora and fauna, searching for additional food sources, and finding safe spots to shelter or rest. Children followed the adults' steps, learning to adapt to the continuously changing rhythm of nature, feeling the sun's warmth on their skin, hearing animal sounds, and realizing that every detail held meaning and potential lessons. Adults showed the children how to interpret natural signs, footprints in damp soil, snapped twigs, or certain scents indicating animal presence. They explained that understanding these signs was key for survival and for building a collective memory that would form the foundation of human knowledge. Children learned by observing, imitating, and attempting to understand the world through direct experience. Every step, touch, and observation became part of a gentle yet profound observational exercise, cultivating respect and awareness toward the environment. Around midday, early humans often paused in shaded areas to rest and prepare food. They carefully processed roots, seeds, and fish from their catch, observing the process attentively. Children learned that food was not merely for consumption, but also part of a broader understanding of the human relationship with nature, that every process and action carried consequences. These simple activities became lessons in patience, attention, and respect for the life surrounding them. The surrounding forest also held a gentle yet challenging mystery. Moving shadows of trees, faint animal sounds, and shifting breezes created curiosity and vigilance. Children learned that the world was full of riddles. That careful and calm observation allowed them to understand the order and disorder in nature. Adults emphasized the importance of patience, tranquility, and respect for unseen phenomena, letting experience serve as the main teacher that instructed them about life and mystery. Additionally, early humans began to develop small rituals related to observing nature and honoring the environment. They might place certain stones to mark animal tracks, arrange twigs or leaves to signal locations, or perform simple gestures marking daily cycles and time. Children were taught to appreciate every action, understanding that even simple acts could hold deep meaning and become part of the collective memory. They learned that the world was not only a physical space, but also a place to observe, feel, and understand the signs surrounding them. As the day progressed, early humans became increasingly adept at adapting to their surroundings. They understood that changes in weather, light, and sounds carried meaning. That daily patterns could indicate food, danger, or upcoming natural phenomena. Children absorbed these lessons gradually, realizing that daily experiences, exploration, and observation were the primary teachers shaping their memory and understanding of the world. In this ancient valley, every second of midday became a lesson about life, mystery, and the relationships between humans, animals, and the surrounding nature. The afternoon in the ancient valley brought a different atmosphere, as sunlight began to fade and tree shadows lengthened across the ground. This time offered early humans the opportunity to observe the changing rhythm of nature. The quieter sounds of animals and the movement of the wind distinct from the daytime. Children walked alongside adults, feeling the cooling earth, hearing different bird songs, and realizing that every part of the day held its own characteristics and lessons. They learned that careful observation allowed them to understand broader patterns of life, and that every experience became part of an ever-expanding memory. Early humans often used the afternoon to arrange their temporary dwellings, repair simple structures made of wood and leaves, and ensure protection from rain or nocturnal animals. Children learned from observing adults' movements, noting every detail, from stacking wood, arranging leaves as coverings, to securing stones that formed small foundations. These activities not only taught physical skills, but also conveyed concepts of caution, planning, and respect for the surrounding environment. They began to understand that every action had consequences, and that understanding the world arose from consistent, direct experience. At the same time, early humans began observing the evening sky. The setting sun, moving clouds, and the changing colors on the horizon. Children were taught to notice these phenomena, realizing that light and shadow patterns were not only beautiful, but also provided clues about time, weather, and animal activity. They learned that nature had its own language, understandable through calm attention, and that every change carried information useful for survival and building collective understanding. Adults spoke in flat tones, explaining observations without dramatization, allowing children to experience them firsthand, fostering natural awe and curiosity. Additionally, the afternoon was often used for small symbolic rituals. Stones, twigs, or leaves collected throughout the day might be arranged into patterns, marking tracks or remembering prior experiences. Children were taught to value these actions, understanding that even simple movements held meaning. That these symbols helped build collective memory, and that daily experiences were not only physical, but also mental and spiritual. They began to sense that life in the ancient valley was not just about survival, but also about building connections with nature, the community, and the surrounding mysteries. The animals they had observed throughout the day began moving toward shelters or foraging for evening food. Children watched these changes, learning to recognize signs of animal behavior and understanding that every living creature followed observable and learnable patterns. They learned about order and disorder in nature, that the world was full of riddles, not always directly explainable, and that awareness of these phenomena was a crucial part of early human understanding. As dusk approached, early humans gathered their catches, prepared simple meals, and sat together, sharing the day's experiences. Children began to realize that these collective experiences were not merely to satisfy physical needs, but also to instill understanding, respect, and memory of the world. Every story, observation, and small ritual became part of a memory structure to be passed down, forming the foundation of early human culture and knowledge. In this ancient valley, the afternoon was a gentle time of learning, where every experience was observed, felt, and remembered with calm and natural curiosity. The dusk in the ancient valley brought a subtle change in atmosphere. The dimming sunlight cast long shadows across the ground, and the sounds of the forest began to shift, becoming softer yet filled with mystery. Early humans used this time to organize their community, prepare shelters for the night, and check every detail that might affect safety and comfort. Children followed the adults' steps attentively, learning to adjust to changes in light, temperature, and sound. They began to realize that the approaching night brought new challenges, and that preparedness was part of ongoing observation. Amid the preparations, early humans sat together to discuss the day's experiences. Adults shared what they had observed. Children shared their own observations, and the community slowly built a collective memory through calm discussion. There was no dramatization, only observations and facts recorded in heart and mind. Children learned that sharing experiences was not merely storytelling, but a way to strengthen collective understanding, cultivate observational thinking, and nurture a deep sense of connection with others and the surrounding environment. Nocturnal animals began to appear faintly in the distance. Insect sounds, small movements in the underbrush, and changing scents signaled that the night would bring new interactions with nature. Children learned to observe without haste, understanding that calmness allowed them to read hidden signs. They began to recognize that the night world had a different language, that patterns of sound and shadow provided crucial information, and that this experience was part of life lessons continuously shaping human memory. Night preparations also involved practical tasks, such as arranging a small fire, preparing the last meal before darkness, and ensuring temporary sleeping areas were protected. Children observed this process closely, learning about safety, efficiency, and attention to detail. Every movement of adults became an example to remember. Every mistake or success, a lesson to guide them in the future. They began to understand that the world was full of unseen challenges, that careful observation was key to survival, and that daily experiences became part of a broader collective memory. Furthermore, dusk became a time for subtle symbolic rituals. Stones, twigs, and leaves collected throughout the day might be arranged into patterns to mark events, honor nature, or signal other community members. Children learned to value these actions, understanding that each symbol carried meaning and helped build a memory structure to be passed down. They realized that life in the ancient valley was not only about survival, but also about nurturing respectful relationships with the environment and one another, and sensing the mystery surrounding them. As dusk deepened, early humans began adjusting to the approaching darkness. They learned to read shadows, pay attention to softer sounds, and recognize signs of nocturnal animals. Children absorbed these lessons gradually, understanding that collective experience and daily observation formed the foundation of greater knowledge. In this ancient valley, dusk was a time of transition, filled with calm, gentle mystery, and learning, where every step and every observation became part of the human memory that would continue to evolve over time. The early night in the ancient valley brought a different atmosphere from the day and dusk. The dark sky was adorned with distant points of light that gradually appeared, stars slowly emerging after the sun had set. Early humans sat around a small fire, its light dancing on their faces, warming their bodies, and providing a sense of security while darkness enveloped the surroundings. Children sat close to the adults, watching the flickering flames with gentle rhythm, feeling the warmth, and listening to the sounds of the night that had previously been hidden behind the daylight. They began to realize that night was a time for introspection, observation, and understanding the rhythm of nature, which differed from the daytime. Adults used the fire as a center for social and educational activity. They shared the day's experiences, recounting observations of animals, natural signs, or events difficult to explain directly. Stories were told in a flat tone without dramatization, allowing children to experience them through their own observation. Children learned that every story, every shared experience was part of the collective memory, guiding them to understand the world, cultivating awe, and teaching patience and calm in the face of mystery. Beyond storytelling, the fire also served as a way to observe the first night sky. Children were introduced to star patterns appearing one by one, saw simple constellations, and learned that the night sky contained information that could be observed and studied. Adults demonstrated that the positions of stars and patterns of light had meaning, could indicate direction, mark time, and provide information about upcoming seasons or weather. Children learned to notice subtle details, understanding that the world was full of signs that could be read if they were patient and attentive. Night also brought new sounds previously hidden, such as nocturnal animal movements, insect calls, or rustling leaves. Children learned to associate these sounds with their surroundings, estimating the type of animal, direction of movement, or potential danger. They began to understand that nature had a vast language, not always visible, but perceivable through focused attention and careful observation. This experience became a crucial part of early human learning, teaching them the relationship between humans, animals, and the surrounding environment in a deeper and more complex way. Amid observation and storytelling, early humans developed gentle symbolic rituals. Stones, twigs, or leaves collected during the day might be placed near the fire, arranged into patterns, or used to mark special experiences. Children learned that these symbols helped build collective memory, gave meaning to daily experiences, and fostered a connection with the environment and community. They began to sense that life in the ancient valley was not only about survival, but also about understanding and appreciating the world through observational experiences, stories, and surrounding symbols. As the night deepened, early humans began to feel a distinctive calm, a mixture of awe, vigilance, and security around the fire. Children learned to quiet themselves, focus on their observations, and realize that night offered opportunities to understand the world from a different perspective. They learned that daily experiences, social interactions, nature observation, and small ritual symbols formed the foundation of human memory, teaching them to see the world calmly, observantly, and with curiosity. In this ancient valley, the early night was a gentle learning time where mystery, warmth, and collective experience merged into a unity guiding early humans to understand the world gradually and profoundly. The night deepened, and the ancient valley transformed into a world illuminated only by the small firelight. The sound of wind sweeping through the trees, the cautious movements of nocturnal animals, and the rustling of leaves created a rhythm that was calming yet full of mystery. Early humans sat in groups with the fire serving as a gathering point, a place to share knowledge, experiences, and observations gathered throughout the day. Children sat close to the adults, paying attention to every word, every movement, and every action. They learned that night was a time when the world felt different, slower, and filled with subtle signs that required careful attention. Around the fire, early humans performed simple rituals marking important experiences or events of the day. Stones, twigs, leaves, and even footprints were arranged into patterns or signs understood only by the community. Children learned to recognize these symbols, understanding that even simple actions could hold deep meaning and contribute to collective memory. They began to realize that these small rituals were not merely social activities, but ways to connect individual experiences to the community's shared experience. Beyond rituals, the night was used for more intense nature observation. Children were taught to calm themselves, focus on the sounds of the night, study animal movement patterns, and read shadows moving in the darkness. They began to understand that the night world had its own rules, and that every movement, sound, and scent carried valuable information. Adults demonstrated calmly, letting children learn through direct experience and patience, which was continually honed. Every observation became part of exercises building memory, skills, and awareness of the broader world. Early humans also observed nighttime weather changes. Stronger winds, the scent of earth after light rain, or rising humidity provided signs that could be used for survival and planning the next day's activities. Children learned to read these signs, understanding that nature had a language to be learned with calm and careful observation. They realized that nighttime experiences formed the foundation for knowledge to be used throughout life, creating a relationship between humans and their environment in gentle yet profound ways. Furthermore, social interaction around the fire reinforced a sense of community. Children observed adults helping one another, adjusting positions to keep the fire burning, and attending to the needs of each group member. They learned that cooperation, attention to others, and observation of the environment were key to survival and building harmonious relationships. These social experiences shaped memory not only of facts or skills, but also of values, respect, and connection, forming the basis of early human community life. As the night progressed, children began to feel a deep calm, a mixture of safety, awe, and curiosity that continued to live within them. They learned that daily experiences, nature observation, small rituals, and social interaction built broader memory and became the foundation of knowledge to be passed down. In this ancient valley, night was a gentle, rhythmic, and poetic time of learning, where every step, sound, and observation became part of a story teaching early humans about life, nature, and the mysteries surrounding them. The middle of the night in the ancient valley brought an atmosphere that was calmer and denser, where the firelight was the only source of warmth and clear vision. The gentle night wind swept across the ground, brushed the leaves, and carried the damp scent from a small river flowing in the distance. Early humans began to feel a different sensation from day or dusk, a calm that allowed them to focus on their own thoughts and feelings while remaining connected to the surrounding environment. Children sat quietly, feeling the pulse of life around them, listening to the sounds of nature and realizing that the night had a different rhythm, slower yet filled with subtle information. Adults spoke in flat tones about their experiences, not only physical, but also reflections on the world, nature, and patterns they observed. Children learned to listen beyond words, gradually absorbing how adults perceived relationships between humans, animals, and nature. Every story and reflection became part of collective memory, teaching them that understanding the world was not always direct or practical, but also required attention, observation, and patience to grasp subtle and implied details. Nighttime natural phenomena became the center of attention, from the shifting starlight, the moon's position, to the characteristic sounds of nocturnal animals. Children learned to observe these changes, realizing that these patterns provided information about direction, potential weather, or animal behavior. They understood that the night world had different laws, where calm and systematic observation helped build deeper knowledge. Adults encouraged them to store experiences in their own memory, linking each phenomenon with daily events and broader community experiences. Social interaction during the middle of the night became more reflective. Children learned to sit quietly, pay attention to others, and understand their role within the community. They observed how adults adjusted their posture, spoke in low voices, and maintained the fire. This activity was not only about physical survival, but also about building social connection and strong collective memory. Children began to realize that life in the ancient valley required balance between attention to oneself, attention to others, and attention to the wider environment. Moreover, the middle of the night was a time for early humans to reflect on experiences not easily explained. Simple symbols made from stones, leaves, or twigs could be placed near the fire, used to mark special experiences or serve as a medium to convey unspoken ideas. Children learned that the world had layers of meaning not always directly visible, and that every movement, sound, or sign could become part of the collective knowledge passed on to future generations. This experience taught them that life was not just about survival, but also about understanding, observing, and appreciating the mysteries around them. As the night deepened, early humans felt a deeper connection with their environment. They learned to recognize animal sound patterns, read tree shadows, and adjust to the calm yet complex rhythm of nature. Children absorbed this experience slowly, realizing that each night was an opportunity to expand their understanding, form richer memories, and connect daily experiences with broader observation. In this ancient valley, the middle of the night was a time of reflection, observation, and deep learning, where early humans gradually comprehended the world through calmness, attention, and a growing sense of curiosity. Midnight in the ancient valley brought a dense silence, where the sounds of nature became clearer and every movement gained significance. The soft firelight still danced, casting long shadows and creating a sense of depth unseen during the day. Early humans began to gaze at the night sky, now filled with stars, observing patterns and positions different from earlier times. Children sat quietly, holding their breath, gradually realizing that the night sky held infinite mysteries, that each star and line of light seemed to carry meanings they had not yet fully understood. Adults guided this observation calmly, introducing children to simple star patterns, indicating possible directions, and hinting at connections between the sky and daily life. They did not explain everything directly, but allowed children to absorb information through their own observation, learning to interpret patterns and build intuitive knowledge. Children began to feel that nighttime experiences were not only physical, but also mental, where imagination and observation merged to create understanding of a broader world. Furthermore, more complex natural phenomena became a focus of attention. Moving tree shadows, changing nocturnal animal sounds, and shifting scents provided information that could be analyzed. Children learned to recognize these patterns, understanding that the night world had its own structure and that these experiences shaped deeper memory. They began to understand that life in the ancient valley was not merely about survival, but also about observing, interpreting, and appreciating the world through careful observation and full awareness. These night observations also marked the beginning of myth and story formation. Children and adults might begin creating stories about stars, animals, or unexplained natural phenomena. These stories were told calmly, like observed facts rather than dramatic tales. They learned that the narratives were not only entertainment, but a way to link experiences, build collective memory, and give meaning to seemingly mysterious phenomena. Each story became a bridge between concrete observation and symbolic interpretation, forming the foundation of early human understanding of the wider world. Beyond the stars, nighttime sounds offered their own lessons. Insects, small animals, and distant large creatures provided cues that could be observed and connected to other events. Children learned to pay attention to sound patterns, associating them with direction, time, and potential dangers or opportunities. They began to understand that night was a time to learn beyond seeing, that listening, sensing, and connecting information were essential parts of collective memory. While gazing at the sky, early humans felt that the night brought a silence, allowing reflection, imagination, and gentle awe. Children learned that silence was not merely the absence of sound, but a space for the mind to observe, interpret, and store experiences in memory. This experience formed the basis of early human knowledge of the world, teaching that life was a combination of real observation, symbolic interpretation, and awe that continuously motivated deeper understanding. In this ancient valley, midnight was a time when early humans began to understand that the world had layers of meaning not always visible, that each star shadow and sound carried information that could be processed. Through calm observation and patience, children learned to connect daily experiences with nighttime phenomena, building a collective memory that became the foundation for their understanding of nature, community, and the mysteries surrounding them. Here, the beginnings of stories, myths, and symbols destined to be passed from generation to generation, emerged from careful observation, imagination, and an enduring curiosity. The night deepened, and the ancient valley seemed alive with subtle yet tangible movements of the surrounding nature. The firelight remained the focal point, but the sounds and shadows of nocturnal animals began to draw the attention of early humans. They realized that night was not simply a time of stillness, but a period when life moved with a different rhythm, where predators, night birds, insects, and other animals followed patterns that needed to be understood. Children learned to distinguish different animal sounds, estimate distance, size, and potential behavior based on the movements and sounds they perceived. Adults guided these observations with calm voices, showing that every change, whether a sound or a shadow, had significance. They taught children that understanding nocturnal animal behavior was not just about survival, but also about building a harmonious relationship with the environment. Children began to sense that the night world had its own dynamics, where attention, patience, and careful observation helped early humans act wisely, predict events, and avoid danger. Furthermore, early humans observed animals interacting with their surroundings. Tracks in the damp earth, displaced leaves, or broken twigs became clues to follow. Children learned to read these signs carefully, connecting information from multiple sources and developing an intuitive understanding of nocturnal life. This experience taught them that even the smallest movement could provide valuable information, and that observing the world carefully helped build memory and skills to be used throughout life. Social activity at night continued, but was softer and more reflective. Children observed adults adjusting their positions, keeping the fire burning, and sharing stories about the day's experiences. They learned that balancing attention to the environment, social interaction, and personal observation was key to living in harmony. These interactions shaped collective memory not only of facts or skills, but also of values, survival strategies, and understanding the complexity of nature. As the night wore on, early humans began using starlight to observe patterns in the sky and mark directions or time. Children learned to connect star patterns with daily experiences, observing that changes in light, the moon's position, or the twinkle of stars could serve as reliable guides. They began to understand that nighttime observation taught patience, precision, and the ability to interpret subtle signs, all of which became essential parts of collective memory and early human knowledge. These intense nighttime experiences laid the foundation for a more complex understanding of the world. Children realized that life in the ancient valley was not only about physical survival, but also about observing, interpreting, and understanding natural phenomena. They learned that the human relationship with the environment was an ongoing process, requiring patience, attention, and unending curiosity. Every animal movement, shadow, and change during the night became lessons stored in memory, shaping how they perceive the world as a whole. Gradually, children absorbed these experiences as part of daily life. They learned to balance fear and wonder, combine real observation with imagination, and develop skills guiding them to understand the world gently yet profoundly. In this ancient valley, the wild and active night became a gentle teacher, instructing early humans to adapt, appreciate, and learn from the unceasing rhythms of nature, forming the foundation of knowledge, and memory to be passed down through generations. As the night began to recede and the sky gradually shifted to a soft gray, early humans started to feel the transition from night to dawn. The nocturnal animal sounds that had been lively began to fade. Early birds could be heard in the distance, and the air became cooler and fresher. The warm firelight grew more pronounced against the diminishing darkness, signaling that the time for nighttime reflection was drawing to a close. Children began to open their eyes wider, holding their breath, and observed this transition with gentle curiosity. Realizing that the world was always changing and that nature's rhythm never remained static. Adults used this moment to teach early morning observation. They pointed out newly emerging birds, animals moving slowly, or thin clouds drifting across the sky. Children learned to interpret these changes, understanding that the night-to-morning transition brought different information compared to the previous night. They began to realize that life had a rhythm that continuously shifted, and that each time, whether night or dawn, carried its own opportunities and challenges. Early human activity at dawn started with a gentle, attentive rhythm. They rearranged the fire, prepared tools or objects that might be needed for the day, and observed natural signs indicating direction or weather. Children learned through observation, imitating adult actions, and gradually understanding that daily life was not only about survival, but also about preparation, environmental awareness, and the ability to adapt to constant change. Additionally, early humans observed changes in light affecting shadows, soil color, and the shapes of trees. They understood that the morning light provided a new perspective, allowing clearer observation of animal tracks, plant signs, or terrain shapes. Children learned to connect nighttime experiences with morning observations, seeing continuity between different phenomena and realizing that nature always had patterns to be studied if approached with patience and care. The dawn transition also became a time for social reflection. Children witnessed gentle interactions among adults, speaking in soft voices, arranging their surroundings, and preparing for daily activities. They learned the value of collaboration, patience, and attention to others while continuing to observe changes in nature. This experience shaped collective memory, combining observation of the real world, social interaction, and symbolic understanding of the environment. With the light increasing, early humans began to realize that the night had offered many lessons. Children learned that experiences throughout the night, observation of stars, animals, and other natural phenomena contributed to a broader understanding of the world. They recognized that the transition to morning was part of a continuous natural cycle, that each night left traces in memory and each morning brought new opportunities to learn, observe, and grow. In this ancient valley, dawn was a time of gentle silence, where nighttime experiences met new light, forming the foundation of knowledge, skills, and collective memory for early humans. Children absorbed all this information slowly, learning to respect nature's rhythm, connecting their experiences with ever-changing natural patterns, and building a foundation of understanding to carry throughout life. The transition from night to morning was not just a change of time, but also a gentle, poetic, and profound learning process where every moment carried meaning and every observation shaped the knowledge foundation to be passed down through generations. The first sunlight gradually pierced the mist of the ancient valley. creating a golden glow that covered trees, rivers, and the damp surface of the earth. Early humans began to move slowly, realizing that every second in the morning held a different value compared to night or early dawn. Children followed adults with careful steps, observing how the first rays of sunlight changed the color of leaves, reflected on the water surface, and highlighted textures of the soil previously hidden in the night's shadows. Adults used this light to point out signs of life that may have been previously unseen. They observed plants, flowers, or moss emerging from the morning dew, checked the direction of rivers or sparkling streams, and conveyed this information in a calm yet attentive tone. Children learned to recognize these signs, understanding that the first sunlight was not merely a visual change, but also carried information about the environment that could be applied to daily activities such as finding food, choosing safe spots, or adjusting travel direction. Morning activities began with simple yet attentive preparation. Early humans arranged tools, examined the condition of the soil to ensure safe walking, and observed every environmental change. Children learned by imitating these actions, realizing that interacting with nature was not only physical, but also observational. They began to understand that detailed morning observation allowed better planning, interpreting natural signs, and building intuitive knowledge to be applied throughout life. Moreover, interaction with water became central. A small flowing river or dew collected on leaves and soil became sources of life and information. Children learned that water carried signs of animal tracks, changes in currents, or even warnings of potential dangers. They understood that comprehending water and early human interaction with it was a crucial part of collective memory and environmental knowledge. Adults emphasized the importance of noticing every detail, not rushing, and recognizing that nature provides subtle yet essential information for survival. Morning observation also involved interaction with plants and soil. Children learned to identify edible plants, medicinal plants, and dangerous ones, as well as how the soil indicated moisture, fertility, or animal movement. They realized that every element of the environment contributed to the overall ecosystem, and studying these relationships required patience, careful observation, and respect for nature. These activities became a way for early humans to develop skills, knowledge, and collective memory to be passed on to future generations. In this ancient valley, the morning was a time when the physical and mental life of early humans began to synergize with the environment. Children absorbed these experiences slowly, observing, imitating, and learning to appreciate the rhythms of nature, light, and water. They understood that each morning brought new opportunities to learn, observe, and build richer collective memory. The first sunlight became a symbol of hope and new understanding, offering early humans a chance to align with nature, expand knowledge, and strengthen their connection with the ever-changing world. The transition from night to morning laid the foundation for early human routines, teaching that every moment in the natural cycle held value, information, and meaning that should be observed with care. Children learned to connect experiences from night, dawn, and morning, building broad awareness of the world, social interaction, and relationships with the environment. In this ancient valley, morning was not only the start of a day, but also the beginning of a process of learning, understanding, And remembering that would become part of early human heritage for thousands of years to come. As the morning light grew brighter, early humans began to move more actively, preparing to gather food and utilize the natural resources around the ancient valley. Children followed adults with curiosity, observing every movement, technique, and strategy used to find fruits, seeds, roots, or small animals that could be utilized. This activity was not merely physical labor, but also observational learning, where children began to understand that the environment always offered clues to those willing to observe carefully. Adults taught children how to read signs in nature, animal tracks on damp ground, leaves moved by wind or creatures, and distinct sounds became useful indicators. Children learned to connect their previous experiences from night to morning with these new signs, realizing that every element of nature had patterns and meanings that could be used for survival and for understanding the wider world. They began to recognize the relationships between time, light, weather, and animal activity, understanding that human life was intertwined with the environment, forming a complex web of existence. During food gathering, early humans also learned hunting strategies and observed the behavior of daytime animals. They watched birds, insects, and small mammals, noting how they moved, searched for food, and reacted to human presence. Children learned to mimic these observations, estimating distances, understanding animal habits, and developing the ability to act cautiously. This experience fostered the awareness that knowledge of nature was essential to life, and that adaptation to the environment was key to survival and thriving. Moreover, early humans observed the interaction of water, soil, and plants while gathering food. Moist leaves, fertile soil, and water puddles harboring seeds or insects became important clues. Children learned to recognize these patterns, understanding that the environment provided subtle yet significant information. They began to realize that every action had consequences, that utilizing natural resources required attention and precision, and that this knowledge would become part of collective memory passed down to future generations. Social activity continued during food gathering. Children observed adults helping one another, sharing information, and ensuring group safety. They learned the value of cooperation, patience, and nonverbal communication while still observing the environment. This experience laid the foundation for balanced social and ecological understanding, combining practical skills with environmental observation and building a collective memory rich in experiences and knowledge. With each step, early humans gained deeper understanding of the relationship between themselves and the environment. Children learned that nature was not merely a backdrop, but an active part of daily life, providing food, guidance, and experiences shaping their knowledge. Food gathering became a practice of skill, observational learning, and reinforcement of the connection with nature. They realized that the ability to interpret the environment, recognize patterns, and act wisely was part of early human heritage, continuously evolving across generations. In this ancient valley, the bright morning brought new awareness. Children learned to observe, imitate, and absorb adult skills, understanding that every interaction with the environment was a valuable lesson. They realized that adapting to nature was a gentle yet profound process, where observation, experience, and curiosity formed the foundation of sustainable and harmonious early human life. Food gathering was not merely about survival, but also about learning to understand the world, observe natural signs, and build a collective memory that would continue living within their community. As the morning light grew brighter, early humans began to move more actively, preparing to gather food and utilize the natural resources around the ancient valley. Children followed adults with curiosity, observing every movement, technique, and strategy used to find fruits, seeds, roots, or small animals that could be utilized. This activity was not merely physical labor, but also observational learning, where children began to understand that the environment always offered clues to those willing to observe carefully. Adults taught children how to read signs in nature. Animal tracks on damp ground, leaves moved by wind or creatures, and distinct sounds became useful indicators. Children learned to connect their previous experiences from night to morning with these new signs. Realizing that every element of nature had patterns and meanings that could be used for survival and for understanding the wider world. They began to recognize the relationships between time, light, weather, and animal activity. Understanding that human life was intertwined with the environment, forming a complex web of existence. During food gathering, early humans also learned hunting strategies and observed the behavior of daytime animals. They watched birds, insects, and small mammals, noting how they moved, searched for food, and reacted to human presence. Children learned to mimic these observations, estimating distances, understanding animal habits, and developing the ability to act cautiously. This experience fostered the awareness that knowledge of nature was essential to life and that adaptation to the environment was key to survival and thriving. Moreover, early humans observed the interaction of water, soil, and plants while gathering food. Moist leaves, fertile soil, and water puddles harboring seeds or insects became important clues. Children learned to recognize these patterns, understanding that the environment provided subtle yet significant information. They began to realize that every action had consequences, that utilizing natural resources required attention and precision, and that this knowledge would become part of collective memory passed down to future generations. Social activity continued during food gathering. Children observed adults helping one another, sharing information, and ensuring group safety. They learned the value of cooperation, patience, and nonverbal communication while still observing the environment. This experience laid the foundation for balanced social and ecological understanding. Combining practical skills with environmental observation and building a collective memory rich in experiences and knowledge. With each step, early humans gained deeper understanding of the relationship between themselves and the environment. Children learned that nature was not merely a backdrop, but an active part of daily life, providing food, guidance, and experiences shaping their knowledge. Food gathering became a practice of skill, observational learning, and reinforcement of the connection with nature. They realized that the ability to interpret the environment, recognize patterns, and act wisely was part of early human heritage, continuously evolving across generations. In this ancient valley, the bright morning brought new awareness. Children learned to observe, imitate, and absorb adult skills, understanding that every interaction with the environment was a valuable lesson. They realized that adapting to nature was a gentle yet profound process, where observation, experience, and curiosity form the foundation of sustainable and harmonious early human life. Food gathering was not merely about survival, but also about learning to understand the world, observe natural signs, and build a collective memory that would continue living within their community. As the morning progressed, early human activity in the ancient valley was no longer solely individual, but began forming more complex patterns of collaboration. Children observed how adults coordinated with each other, divided tasks, and adjusted their actions according to the needs of the group. Every movement had a purpose greater than merely fulfilling individual needs. They learned that the success of the group depended on each member's ability to understand their role, communicate subtly, and adapt to others. Children watched adults assign roles based on skill, physical strength, and experience. Some were tasked with gathering food in the forest or along the riverbank, while others maintained security or monitored animal movement. Children understood that task division was not only about efficiency, but also about trust, recognizing each person's abilities and shared responsibility. They began to realize that a well-organized group could face greater challenges, survive dangers, and utilize resources more effectively. Social interaction in the morning was also rich with gentle values passed from generation to generation. Children observed adults giving instructions, reminding or calming one another with calm tones and subtle gestures. They learned body language, facial expressions, and vocal intonations that conveyed meaning without long words. This experience laid the foundation for nonverbal communication, empathy, and social understanding, all essential aspects of early human life. Collaboration was also evident in how early humans responded to environmental changes. When animal tracks appeared near the river or weather changes were felt in the air, they quickly adjusted group strategies, reassigned roles, or moved the group if necessary. Children learned that early human life was a process of collective adaptation, where individual observation combined with group decisions to achieve safety and success. They realized that the environment was not merely a backdrop, but an active part of a complex social system. This morning experience also emphasized the importance of observational learning in a social context. Children learned by watching adult interactions, noticing how they assessed situations, shared information, and responded calmly to change. They understood that learning was not always done through words, but through attention, repetition, and shared experience. This process shaped a collective memory that integrated environmental knowledge, practical skills, and social values, all interconnected and giving meaning to daily life. Collaborative activity in the morning not only strengthened physical abilities and survival strategies, but also built a sense of group identity. Children began to recognize who had more experience, who was more cautious, and who took risks. They learned to appreciate each member's contribution, understanding that group success was the result of gentle, attentive, and mutually understanding cooperation. This understanding became the foundation for forming a harmonious and adaptive community, where every individual played a crucial role in collective survival. In this ancient valley, morning became a moment when early humans learned not only about nature or food, but also about human relationships. Children absorbed these lessons gently, observing, imitating, and gradually internalizing values of collaboration, empathy, and social responsibility. They learned that collective awareness, cooperation, and the ability to adapt within a group were inseparable from life experiences, shaping memory, knowledge, and the culture of early humans to be passed on to future generations. As the morning rolled into noon, early humans in the ancient valley began to observe natural patterns and signs brought by weather changes more intensely. Children watched as adults observed clouds, wind, and the movement of leaves, predicting rain or possible temperature shifts. These observations were made calmly, without haste, as if every natural sign held a subtle yet important meaning. They learned that understanding the environment was not only about seeing, but also about interpreting, connecting past experiences and recognizing recurring patterns over time. Weather patterns, animal movements, and plant changes became symbols remembered and interpreted by early humans. Children learned that each sign carried meaning that could guide daily activities, whether gathering food, relocating the group, or preparing shelter. They began to realize that nature spoke through subtle symbols and clues, and that the ability to interpret these symbols was essential for survival skills and collective knowledge. Furthermore, everyday experiences offered deeper symbolic lessons. The sudden flight of a bird, the slow rise of a river, or the scent of the earth after rain became part of the memory shaping early human understanding. Children began to connect these experiences with stories, practices, and previous observations, building a foundation of symbolic knowledge that helped them make wiser decisions in an ever-changing environment. Symbolic learning was also evident in social interactions and simple rituals. Children observed how adults used gestures, sounds, or tools to signal, warn, or convey information. They learned that symbols could be physical actions, sounds, or visual signs with specific meanings, and that understanding symbols was key for communication, cooperation, and group safety. This experience cultivated an understanding that the world has layers of meaning that can be interpreted with care, patience, and full attention. Interaction with nature during the day taught children about cause and effect, order, and flowing rhythms. They began to recognize that weather patterns and animal movements were not random, but part of a complex, natural system. Children learned to connect physical experiences with symbolic understanding, realizing that every natural event could be a lesson, and that every observation was an opportunity to expand knowledge and strengthen collective memory. These symbolic activities not only shaped practical skills, but also built a sense of connectedness with nature. Children realized that they were part of a larger world, where every sign and pattern held meaning. They learned to value time, observe subtle changes, and interpret significance behind seemingly simple phenomena. This process laid the foundation for deep understanding of nature, social life, and the heritage of knowledge that would continue evolving across generations. In this ancient valley, noon was a time when early humans combined physical experience, observation, and symbolic learning into one unity. Children learned to listen, interpret, and internalize meaning from their surroundings, building the basis for abstract thinking, intuition, and the ability to comprehend a broader world. They realized that every experience, sign, or pattern held significance, and that the ability to read nature as symbols was part of a collective memory that would be inherited and expanded from generation to generation. As the day grew hotter, early human activity in the ancient valley began to adjust to environmental changes. The sun's heat influenced movement, shelter selection, and strategies for gathering food or water. Children observed how adults chose shaded areas under large trees, used the valley's breeze, and adjusted their activity rhythm to avoid exhaustion or risks from excessive heat. They learned that adaptation to physical conditions was an essential skill to acquire early, and that nature always demanded careful attention and appropriate responses. Moreover, the movement of large animals became a focus of daytime observation. Children watched prehistoric mammals, both herbivores and predators, walking, resting, or searching for food. They learned to recognize footprints, signs of animal presence, and behavioral patterns that could indicate whether an area was safe. This observation became a practice in adaptive strategy, where early humans adjusted their steps based on animal positions, wind direction, and the constantly changing environment. Children began to understand that survival and safety depended on the ability to observe, interpret, and respond flexibly to the surroundings. Interaction with large animals also provided social and symbolic lessons. Adults demonstrated how understanding animal behavior could be translated into group strategy. For example, if a herd of herbivores moved in a certain direction, it could signal seasonal changes or water availability. Children learned that such interpretation required precision, experience, and the ability to read often subtle patterns. They began to build collective memory storing crucial information about animals, the environment, and signs useful for survival. Daytime adaptation also involved careful use of natural resources. Early humans used shadows, land formations, and water flow to determine travel paths, resting spots, and food gathering locations. Children learned that the environment offered abundant information to reduce risks, find opportunities, and maximize the outcome of their efforts. Every observed action, every imitated strategy, contributed to experiences and knowledge that would become part of the collective memory of their generation. Daytime observation also taught patience and deep attention. Children learned that environmental changes and animal behavior often occurred slowly and subtly, requiring persistence and careful observation to understand the patterns. They realized that adaptation was not merely an instant reaction, but a gentle, ongoing learning process, where observation, experience, and interpretation combine to form a broader understanding of the world around them. Beyond practical aspects, this experience instilled respect for nature and its creatures. Children saw early humans move carefully, not disturbing animals more than necessary, and always observing ecological balance. They learned that successful adaptation involved understanding the relationships among themselves, animals, and the environment, as well as awareness that every action had consequences for both the group and nature. In this ancient valley, the daytime was an intense period of learning, where early humans combined observation, interpretation, and adaptive strategy into a single practice. Children absorb these lessons attentively, watching animal movements, environmental changes, and adult interactions. They began to understand that the ability to adjust to constantly changing conditions was a vital part of life, shaping practical skills, social understanding, and collective memory to be inherited and expanded by future generations. As the day progressed, early humans began to pay closer attention to the use of simple tools as part of their survival strategies and food gathering. Children observed how adults used stones, wood, and bones to dig, cut, or construct temporary shelters. Every movement was performed meticulously, as if teaching that tools were not merely inanimate objects, but extensions of human skill and thought. Children learned that understanding the function of a tool, using it properly, and adjusting its use to the situation were crucial practical skills that could determine their safety and success. In food gathering, simple tools such as blunt stones were used to crack hard seeds, cut tubers, or peel fruit skins. Children learned through direct observation, seeing how adults chose the appropriate tool, adjusted the force applied, and considered the risk of injury. They began to realize that each tool had unique characteristics, and the ability to recognize its utility and limits was part of practical knowledge rich in experience. Beyond food gathering, tool use was also evident in defending against large animals or predators. Adults demonstrated how sticks, stones, or prepared thorns could be used to ward off threats or maintain a safe distance. Children learned that these defensive techniques were not merely instinctual, but the result of observation, experience, and careful planning. They absorbed that the group's safety depended on the proper use of tools and good coordination among members. This learning process was not only practical, but also symbolic. Children understood that tools symbolized humanity's ability to adapt to the environment, to extend physical capabilities, and to confront risks with more careful strategies. Each use of a tool became part of a collective story, an experience passed down through generations, forming the foundation of early human collective memory rich in technique, strategy, and understanding of the world. Children's observation of tool use also involved creativity and small experiments. They tried to imitate adult movements, arrange stones or wood according to their imagination, and observe the outcomes of these trials. This process developed motor skills, patience, and cause and effect reasoning. Children learned that trying, failing, and repeating were natural parts of learning, and that direct experience was the best teacher for understanding tool function and the surrounding environment. Moreover, tool use reinforced cooperation and communication within the group. Children saw adults sharing tools, teaching their use, and reminding each other to apply force safely. They began to understand that practical skills, knowledge of tools, and social coordination were interconnected, forming the foundation for a collaborative culture characteristic of early human life. In this ancient valley, the daytime became a rich period of practical learning, where children absorbed techniques of tool use, defense strategies, and food gathering skills. They understood that every stone, piece of wood, or bone was not just an object, but a manifestation of human knowledge, experience, and creativity. This process built practical skills, social awareness, and collective memory to be inherited and expanded by future generations, making simple tools a bridge between individual experience and the enduring knowledge of the group. As the sun began to descend, early humans in the ancient valley started practicing subtle, long-distance communication techniques essential for group safety. Children observed how adults used sounds, hand signals, and body movements to convey information without approaching each other. They learned that this communication was not just about words, but about conveying intentions accurately, ensuring every member understood the message and maintaining effective coordination. Children began to realize that the success of the group depended on the ability to communicate, recognize signals, and respond swiftly and correctly. Moreover, long-distance communication was used to warn of dangers from predators or changing environmental conditions. Adults demonstrated how certain sounds, such as shouts, knocks, or simple tool noises, could serve as danger signals. Children learned to recognize sound patterns, the context of the signals, and the actions to take in response. This experience taught them the importance of vigilance, attention to detail, and a comprehensive understanding of the situation before acting. Group coordination was also central to this communication practice. Children saw how each member had a role in observing the environment, sending warnings, and responding to information. They learned that effective communication required awareness of the position, timing, and condition of each group member. Every signal sent or received carried consequences, and the ability to read the situation quickly could determine the safety and success of the entire group. This learning process was not only practical, but also symbolic. Children understood that every gesture, sound, or movement carried meaning that had to be interpreted carefully. They learned that communication was a tool to unite individuals toward a common goal, ensure safety, and build deep social connections. This understanding became the foundation for collective memory involving social knowledge, survival strategies, and the ability to interpret both natural and social signs simultaneously. In addition to verbal or bodily communication, early humans began using simple visual signals such as smoke, shadows, or the movement of objects to convey information over distance. Children learned to observe these patterns closely, noting when and how these signs appeared and linking them to environmental conditions. They understood that effective communication required a combination of observation, experience, and the ability to interpret meaning from multiple sources, forming a complex yet subtle collective strategy. This experience fostered awareness that communication and coordination were skills to be continually honed and learned through observation and direct practice. Children realized that the ability to understand and use long-distance signals was essential in early human life, enabling them to face challenges, maintain safety, and strengthen social bonds within the group. This process formed the foundation of strategic thinking, social awareness, and collective memory to be passed on to future generations. In this ancient valley, the late afternoon became a critical moment for learning about communication, vigilance, and coordination. Children absorbed these lessons carefully, observing adult interactions, listening to every sound, and interpreting every movement. They began to understand that the ability to convey messages, read signals, and act synchronously with the group was central to safety, survival, and early human social life. This experience instilled the understanding that communication is a bridge between individuals, the environment, and the group, shaping collective memory and culture that would continue to evolve. As dusk began to cast shadows across the ancient valley, early humans focused on preparing for the coming night. Children observed adults gathering fuel for the fire, selecting dry wood, twigs, and leaves that ignited easily, while remaining vigilant against predators that became more active as darkness approached. Every step was taken carefully and attentively, teaching children that preparing for the night was a survival strategy that required precision. They learned that fire was not just a source of light and warmth, but also a symbol of safety, a social connector, and the center of many nighttime activities for early humans. The process of gathering fuel was not merely a physical task, but also a means of observational learning. Children learn to identify the types of wood most effective for starting a fire, how to stack it for stable burning, and how to use remnants from previous nights. They noticed that a well-lit fire could ward off cold, protect the group, and provide a subtle sense of comfort for all members. Through this observation, they absorbed the understanding that every element in nature has a function and that the ability to manage resources carefully was knowledge to be passed down through generations. In addition to gathering fuel, early humans performed simple rituals as darkness approached, which children watched and sometimes imitated. These rituals were simple, such as arranging stones or twigs around the fire, specific hand movements, or sounds signaling the beginning of nighttime activities. Children learned that these rituals were not merely habits, but also provided structure, calmness, and a sense of control over an environment becoming dark and mysterious. They began to understand that repetition and patterns in ritual helped soothe the mind, reinforce safety, and instill collective memory associated with protection and social life. Observation of nighttime preparations also highlighted the importance of cooperation. Children saw how each group member had a role, from selecting fuel to preparing a safe area around the fire. They learned that the success of nighttime preparation depended on coordination, communication, and attention to detail. Every small action, such as stacking wood correctly or placing stones strategically, affected the safety and comfort of the entire group. Children began to understand that early human life depended on collective awareness and individual responsibility for group well-being. The simple rituals performed at dusk also served as symbolic learning. Children understood that movements, sounds, and repeated patterns carried meaning, whether signaling, readiness, warning, or social connection. They realized that these symbols formed a subtle network of communication, connecting group members with each other and their environment, providing stability amid darkness. This experience instilled the understanding that nighttime was not merely a time for rest, but an important moment to strengthen social bonds, preserve safety, and keep collective memory alive. From late afternoon to dusk, children learned to observe, imitate, and understand the rhythm of early human life. They absorbed techniques for gathering fuel, strategies for lighting fires, and simple rituals as part of experiences building practical skills, symbolic understanding, and social awareness. Every observed or attempted action became part of an evolving collective memory, forming the foundation for a safe, structured, and meaningful nightly life. In this ancient valley, as twilight crept into every corner, early humans began preparing for the night with meticulous care and calm rhythm. Children learned that every step, from gathering wood to performing rituals around the fire, was part of a broader life strategy. They realized that the ability to utilize resources, understand ritual patterns, and maintain group safety was an invaluable skill. And that nighttime, though dark and mysterious, could be a time of learning, protection, and warmth, preserving life and the memory of early humans. As night fell over the ancient valley, the carefully tended fire became the center of early human life. Children sat around the fire, watching adults sit quietly while observing the flames, listening to the crackle of wood and feeling the gentle warmth. The night atmosphere was filled not only with physical warmth, but also with social warmth, as the fire became a focal point where experiences, knowledge, and stories were shared. Children learned that interaction around the fire was an important part of learning social values, including patience, attentiveness, and respect for one another and the surrounding natural world. The stories shared around the fire often blended fact and imagination. Adults recounted hunting experiences, encounters with large animals, or mysterious events that occurred in the ancient valley. Children listened attentively, interpreting every word and vocal tone, and learned that every story contained lessons or survival strategies. They began to understand that collective memory was built not only from direct experience, but also through narratives passed down from generation to generation. Interaction around the fire also involved practicing social values, such as sharing, helping, and caring for the weaker members. Children observed how adults gave portions of food to the hungry, assisted tired or injured group members, and looked out for one another. This observation taught them that living in a group was not just about individual survival, but also about contribution, responsibility, and solidarity. These values became the foundation for subtle social understanding and interaction skills essential to early human group life. Beyond stories and social practice, the fire also served as a medium for symbolic learning. Children learned that the flames represented safety, a focal point of attention, and a connection between individuals and their environment. A steady fire provided a sense of security, drove away darkness, and became a reference point for nighttime activities. Children realized that the fire's presence was not merely physical, but symbolic, instilling a sense of control, order, and emotional warmth that strengthened group cohesion. Learning around the fire also involved observing body language, facial expressions, and the tone of adults' voices. Children absorbed nonverbal communication, understanding signs of attention, tension, or hidden emotions behind words. They learned that social interaction was not always explicitly stated, but often shown through subtle movements, intonation, and spontaneous reactions. This experience trained social awareness, empathy, and the ability to interpret meaning within both group and environmental contexts. During this night, children began to understand the importance of individual roles in maintaining social balance. They realized that their contributions, however small, could affect the safety, comfort, and harmony of the group. Children learned that nighttime was not just a period for rest, but also a time to strengthen social bonds, absorb knowledge, and build collective memory that would serve as the foundation for their future lives. The atmosphere around the fire remained calm and rhythmic. Children listened to the crackling wood, heard the wind brushing against leaves, and observed shadows moving slowly around them. They began to sense that the night, though dark and mysterious, could be a safe space for learning, experimentation, and interaction. This experience taught them social skills, moral values, and subtle adaptive strategies, while reinforcing connections with the group and the surrounding natural world. In this ancient valley, nighttime was an intense period of learning that unified stories, social values, natural observation, and the symbolism of fire. Children learned that every story, action, and interaction carried meaning, forming the foundation of social and collective understanding to be passed down through generations. This nightly experience cultivated the awareness that early humans lived within a complex social network where communication, attentiveness, and empathy were keys to survival and group harmony. As the night deepened, early humans in the ancient valley began to emphasize more profound nightly rituals, evident in the repeated movements and sounds around the fire. Children observed adults carefully arranging stones and twigs, forming small circles that seemed to serve as focal points for group energy. They also noticed repeated hand movements and soft sounds accompanying the flickering flames. Though seemingly simple, these rituals held deep symbolic layers, connecting humans with nature, the group, and collective experiences that evolved night after night. Children learned that these rituals were not merely about physical display, but about awareness, concentration, and connection with the environment. They absorbed the lesson that every movement and sound had a purpose, signaling readiness, warning, or respect for natural elements and unseen forces. Through this observation, they understood that early humans cultivated safety, calmness, and psychological control through repetition, patterns, and symbols. Nightly rituals became tools for instilling tranquility, reducing anxiety about darkness, and maintaining the emotional stability of the group. Furthermore, nightly rituals reinforced collective memory. Children witnessed how each action performed by adults, from arranging stones to rhythmic hand movements, was repeated night after night, creating recognizable patterns for all group members. They began to understand that this repetition not only preserved tradition, but also stored critical information about survival, danger signs, and social strategies. Through ritual, individual and collective experiences merged into a memory that could be passed down, forming the foundation for more complex knowledge in the future. Children also learn to recognize the symbolic meaning of natural elements involved in the ritual. The firelight, moving shadows, blowing wind, and sounds of nature became part of a symbolic communication system that was both calming and reassuring. They understood that nature was not merely a backdrop, but an active partner in early human life, providing signals, resources, and context for rituals that enhanced awareness and social cohesion. This experience taught them the interconnection between humans, the environment, and collective memory, as well as the importance of respecting seemingly simple yet meaningful elements. The nightly ritual also involves subtle emotional aspects. Children felt a sense of calm flowing through the repeated patterns, gentle sounds, and harmonious interactions around the fire. They began to understand that psychological tranquility was vital for early humans, helping them cope with uncertainty, reduce fear, and build trust in themselves and the group. Rituals became a means for early humans to balance emotions, strengthen social bonds, and create a safe mental space amid the mysterious darkness. Additionally, observing the nightly ritual provided lessons on consistency, patience, and focus. Children saw how adults carried out each step slowly, attentively, and repeatedly without haste. They understood that this process required self-control, attention to detail, and the ability to synchronize actions with other members and the surrounding environment. This awareness laid the foundation for developing cognitive skills, attentiveness, and reflection essential for daily life and group survival. In this ancient valley, the nightly ritual was not merely a physical activity, but a profound experience uniting symbols, nature, social interaction, and collective memory. Children absorbed the lesson that every action, sound, and movement held meaning, forming a subtle and comprehensive communication network. They understood that rituals served to maintain calm, instill memory, and strengthen the bond between individuals, the group, and the environment. Night became a safe space for reflection, learning, and instilling values that would be passed on to future generations, keeping early human life harmonious, structured, and meaningful. As the night grew darker and the fire began to wane, early humans in the ancient valley sat in a near-sacred silence. Children observed how adults gazed at the dark sky, listened to the wind passing through the trees, and attended to the rhythm of the night that could not be expressed in words. Here, they learned about natural phenomena that could not be easily explained: shadows moving among the trees, strange sounds emerging from afar, and occasional flashes of light in the sky, perhaps falling stars or inexplicable glimmers. Children learned that nature was full of mysteries and that curiosity must be accompanied by patience, careful observation, and a calm mind. Mysterious stories began to be told around the fire, blending legend, personal experience, and interpretations of unexplainable natural events. Adults spoke of large shadows that once appeared on the hillside, sounds that disturbed the night, or lights dancing across the empty valley. Children listened attentively, interpreting every word, and learned that uncertainty was not always frightening, but could also be a source of learning and understanding. They began to realize that early humans built knowledge not only from what was visible and explainable, but also from what was vague, uncertain, and puzzling. Observation of these natural phenomena taught children about mental resilience and adaptation. They witnessed how adults remained calm even when facing unexplained events, observing carefully and acting cautiously without panic. Children understood that the ability to stay calm, attend to details, and interpret subtle signs was an essential survival skill. They learned that the mysteries of nature were not just challenges, but also part of learning about the relationship between humans and their environment and the larger world. Furthermore, the night became a time for reflection on collective experience. Children learned that every story, sound, and shadow observed that night was stored in the group's memory, forming an archive of experiences that could guide the future. They began to understand that early humans built a flexible knowledge system, blending real experiences, stories, and symbolic interpretations to navigate uncertainty. Nighttime became a moment to learn about caution, observation, and respect for a mysterious environment. The mysterious stories shared at night also instilled social values. Children realized that sharing experiences, observing group reactions, and interpreting natural events together strengthened bonds and solidarity. They learned that uncertainty and unexplainable phenomena could serve to reinforce trust, mutual awareness, and collective safety. In the stillness of night, they absorbed lessons on the importance of communication, collaboration, and openness to unforeseen possibilities. These mysterious nighttime experiences also nurtured imagination and creativity. Children saw that when facts were insufficient to explain an event, early humans used imagination to interpret, weave stories, and find meaning. They learned that imagination was not merely entertainment, but a vital tool for understanding the world, devising survival strategies, and keeping collective memory alive and relevant. The ability to think creatively and flexibly began to take root through these experiences, preparing children to face future challenges. In this ancient valley, the night was a space where calmness, observation, mystery, and learning converged. Children understood that the world could not always be clearly explained, and that curiosity, patience, and connection with both the environment and the group were keys to survival and understanding life. This experience instilled the understanding that mystery, though not always solvable, held value, shaped collective memory, and enriched early human life in subtle yet profound ways. As the night waned and starlight began to fade on the eastern horizon, early humans in the ancient valley began preparing for sleep. Children observed how adults arranged their resting places around the now dwindling fire, stacking animal skins, leaves, and twigs to create warm and safe sleeping surfaces. They learned that preparing for sleep was not merely about physical comfort, but also about safety, order, and mental readiness for the following night. This activity was carried out with a calm rhythm, unhurried, allowing children to absorb every step, movement, and the intent behind adult actions. Amid the preparations, children listened to soft whispers of stories, tales of hunts, mysterious experiences from the night, and observations of inexplicable natural phenomena. These stories were conveyed gently, sometimes only as a sigh or a light touch on the shoulder, providing security while stimulating imagination. They learned that nighttime experiences were recorded not only in physical actions, but also through collective narratives delivered slowly, forming a shared memory that became the foundation for social and cultural learning. Closing night rituals began, during which children observed adults arranging small circles around the almost extinguished fire, placing stones and twigs, and performing subtle movements that strengthened the sense of group connection. They learned that this rite was not merely symbolic, but also served to close the night's experiences, calm the mind, and prepare body and spirit for sleep. Children felt a flowing calm, understanding that repetition, pattern, and symbol provided psychological stability and a profound sense of security. Beyond physical rituals, collective reflection became an essential part of sleep preparation. Children observed adults quietly discussing the night's experiences, reminding one another of potential dangers, or emphasizing lessons drawn from natural phenomena and social interactions. They learned that collective reflection helped preserve information, reinforced group memory, and instilled understanding of resilience, caution, and responsibility toward the environment and fellow group members. Sleep preparation also taught children about wise resource use. They observed how remaining embers were used for warmth, how animal skins and leaves were arranged for comfort, and how sleeping locations were chosen to be safe from animals or changing conditions. Children understood that every action had a purpose, and that planning and attention to detail were part of survival strategies to be learned and passed down to future generations. In the quiet before sleep, children absorbed an understanding of the natural rhythm of early human life. They realized that the night, though dark and mysterious, was a time for learning, strengthening social bonds, building collective memory, and fostering psychological calm. Every observed step, every story heard, and every witnessed ritual shaped an understanding of a complex yet structured world, where early humans balanced physical, emotional, and social needs. In this ancient valley, the transition from night to dawn was laden with learning, reflection, and calm. Children understood that sleep was not merely rest, but part of a life cycle involving observation, experience, narrative, and social interaction. They realized that each night spent with the group, even amid mystery and uncertainty, provided valuable lessons on connection, security, and social values that would form the foundation of their lives. As night gave way to dawn, early humans prepared to enter sleep with the security and knowledge gained from the collective experiences of the night. Children learned that early human life was shaped by natural rhythms, social interaction, and subtle yet profound symbolism. They felt that each night spent calmly, with careful observation and reflection, strengthened collective memory and prepared them to face a new day with readiness, skills, and tranquility passed down through generations. As the first dawn touched the hilltops of the ancient valley, early humans began to move with a gentler rhythm, as if the shadows of the mysterious night still lingered. Children observed that some adults started the day by walking slowly to the forest edge, watching trees, rocks, and winding rivers as if searching for signs or clues that could only be understood by the experienced. They learned that nature held layers of mystery not immediately visible, and that early humans had the ability to read symbols, patterns, and hidden clues in the landscape, sounds, and movements of living creatures. The interaction with nature that morning was not merely physical, but also symbolic. Children watched adults place stones in specific spots, observe the flow of water, and examine animal tracks with patience and precision. Every action, though seemingly simple, held deep meaning, forming a bridge between daily experience and a greater understanding of the relationship between humans and the world around them. Children learned that these observations were part of survival strategies and a means to respect and understand the unseen yet real forces of nature in everyday life. Hidden symbolism also emerged through the patterns and rhythms of nature observed by early humans. Shadows of trees shifting with the sun, the wind whispering through leaves, and seemingly random animal movements actually conveyed important information about the environment. Children began to realize that early humans could interpret the meaning of these symbols. Using intuition, experience, and inherited stories to understand risks, resources, and possibilities around them. These skills became part of collective memory passed down through generations. Observing hidden natural phenomena also emphasized patience and sensitivity. Children saw that adults could sit or stand for hours without moving, simply observing birds, animal tracks, or changes in light. They learned that calmness and deep focus allowed early humans to uncover layers of mystery that could not be explained with words. This experience instilled an understanding that mystery was not something to fear, but could be studied through patience, careful observation, and thoughtful interpretation. On this quiet morning, early humans also used symbolism to express social and spiritual relationships. Children witnessed small ceremonies by the river, where adults placed leaves, stones, or water as a sign of respect toward nature and unseen forces. They learned that these symbols not only strengthened group bonds, but also instilled respect for the environment, life balance, and awareness of the interconnectedness of humans, animals, and nature. This experience instilled an understanding that every action could have dual meaning, practical and symbolic, and that early human life was filled with subtle yet profound layers of significance. Beyond observation and symbolism, the morning's mystery was also connected to emotional experience. Children realized that calmness, focus, and the rhythm of nature helped early humans regulate emotions, relieve tension, and foster trust in themselves and the group. They learned that understanding mystery was not always about rational explanation, but about mental readiness, the ability to accept uncertainty, and connection with collective experience. It was a lesson in how early humans balanced body, mind, and environment through observation, symbolism, and meaningful interaction. In this ancient valley, deeper layers of mystery gently unfolded through the quiet morning. Children learned that nature, social experience, and hidden symbolism interacted to form a delicate and complex network of knowledge. They realized that early humans lived in a world full of mystery, and that the ability to observe, interpret, and respect these layers was essential for survival, learning, and the formation of collective memory to be passed down to future generations. As the sun gradually rose, spreading warm light across the ancient valley, early humans began to observe the phenomena in the sky above them. Children watched how adults gazed at the sun, clouds, and wind direction, as if searching for hidden clues that only the experienced could understand. Sky phenomena, such as the movement of clouds, light reflecting off the river's surface, or shadows shifting with the angle of sunlight, were considered to hold deep symbolic meaning. Children learned that early humans could interpret the universe visually and intuitively, understanding that the sky was not just a backdrop, but also a source of information, inspiration, and guidance for daily life. Observing the sky also became a means for early humans to reflect on their existence and relationship with the wider world. Children noticed how adults calmed themselves, standing or sitting in silence, staring at the horizon, seemingly trying to capture hidden messages from nature. They learned that this reflection was not only about seeking concrete answers, but about cultivating awareness, awe, and understanding the interconnectedness between humans, nature, and phenomena larger than themselves. Sky phenomena were also linked to stories and legends passed down through generations. Children heard tales of strange lights appearing in the night sky, the movement of stars interpreted as guidance, or clouds changing shapes as certain signs. They learned that these stories, though imaginative, served as media to preserve collective memory, instill values, and help early humans navigate the uncertainties of their world. These tales taught them that symbols and narratives could be tools for understanding reality while maintaining connections with the environment and social group. Human interaction with nature and sky also taught patience and precision. Children observed adults waiting for hours to watch the subtle movements of clouds, shadows, or changing light. They understood that the ability to notice seemingly trivial details was key to interpreting environmental cues and making wise decisions. This patience also instilled the understanding that early human life was full of gradual processes, where every observation, action, and interpretation required time, attention, and repetition to yield useful knowledge. Moreover, natural and sky symbolism helped early humans embed emotional and spiritual meaning into daily life. Children learned that observing the movement of the sun, the shadows of trees, or cloud patterns was not only about survival, but also about cultivating awe, calm, and understanding the cycles of life. They began to realize that nature and sky were teachers, imparting order, rhythm, and profound values through phenomena that appeared simple yet were full of meaning. This morning experience also emphasized the importance of holistic human-environment connection. Children witnessed how interactions with the sky, water, trees, and animals formed a complex system of knowledge, where each element had practical, symbolic, and emotional functions. They learned that early humans did not separate themselves from nature, but lived in harmony, reading signs and interpreting phenomena to maintain balance between needs, safety, and spiritual understanding. In this ancient valley, the mysteries of the sky and nature gradually unfolded through observation, stories, and subtle symbolism. Children realized that early humans lived in a world full of enigmas, and the ability to interpret signs, understand natural phenomena, and absorb lessons from symbolism was crucial to life. They learned that the world, though seemingly simple, was rich with layers of meaning awaiting discovery through observation, reflection, and continuously evolving collective experience. With the sun rising higher and morning light penetrating the foliage of the ancient valley, early humans began their subtle and meaningful morning rituals. Children observed how adults calmly divided tasks, prepared simple tools from stone and wood, or gathered food from the forest and river. While maintaining harmony and attention to the surrounding environment, they learned that every daily action had rhythm, symbolism, and deep social meaning, teaching patience, cooperation, and careful observation. Social interaction was central to this morning ritual. Children noticed how adults exchanged information about animal tracks, cloud movements, or signs in nature that might indicate weather changes or potential danger. These discussions occurred in soft voices and gentle movements, so children learned that early human communication was not only about words, but also about understanding gestures, tone, and symbols arising from shared observation. They understood that these social skills were crucial for survival, enabling the group to act together in a coordinated and wise manner. Beyond practical aspects, morning rituals contained subtle symbolism. Children observed how stones, twigs, or leaves were placed in specific patterns, possibly as signs of respect toward nature or as part of collective knowledge passed down. They learned that this symbolism was not empty belief, but a means for early humans to create order, remember past experiences, and instill a sense of security through patterns they themselves established. These simple symbols connected physical, social, and spiritual experiences that shaped daily life. Children's observation of social interactions also taught empathy and respect for group members. They saw how adults paid attention to one another, reminded each other of potential dangers, or offered help without formal command. Children learned that early humans lived in interdependent communities and that understanding the needs, emotions, and roles of each member was key to maintaining safety and group harmony. They realized that social interaction was not merely information exchange, but a process of building trust, solidarity, and collective security. Additionally, the surrounding environment became part of the ritual and learning. Children observed how early humans interpreted changes in light, tree shadows, or wind direction as part of practical and symbolic knowledge. They learned that nature was not merely a backdrop, but an active partner teaching order, rhythm, and guidance that could help the group survive. Every observed sign, however small or subtle, became part of a deep and evolving knowledge network, where individual and collective experiences complemented each other. Morning rituals also emphasize the importance of consistency and repetition. Children witnessed how simple daily actions, such as lighting a fire, arranging stones, or observing animal movements, became part of patterns that strengthened memory, skills, and symbolic understanding. They learned that early human learning was not only through words or direct instruction, but also through repetition, observation, and practical experience that built habits, intuition, and a profound understanding of the world. In this ancient valley, morning rituals were a meeting point of social interaction, natural symbolism, and collective learning. Children began to understand that early humans lived in a world full of signs, symbols, and mysteries, where every action and observation had practical and spiritual meaning. They realized that the continuity of the group, safety, and collective knowledge depended on the ability to read the environment, cooperate, and interpret natural symbolism carefully, making daily life part of a delicate and complex network of understanding. As the sun climbed higher, early humans in the ancient valley began entering a different phase of daytime activity, where the calm rhythm of morning gradually shifted to a more intense yet still tranquil pace. Children observed that each individual had specific roles carried out with precision and awareness of the surrounding environment. Some adults ventured into the forest to gather food, observe animal tracks, or study plants that could be eaten or used as medicine. These activities were carried out attentively, using patterns, sounds, and movements of nature as guidance. Children learned that these skills required careful observation, patience, and the ability to interpret complex natural signs. Social interaction remained central to the daytime activities. Children watched how adults reminded each other of hidden dangers, shared knowledge about food or water sources, and adjusted hunting or gathering strategies according to the ever-changing environmental conditions. They learned that the ability to cooperate, share information, and collectively interpret natural signs was part of a highly efficient survival mechanism. Every action was not done arbitrarily, but followed patterns, experience, and symbolic knowledge passed down from previous generations. The natural phenomena observed during daytime activities revealed deeper complexity. Children realized that tree shadows, cloud movements, or animal sounds were not merely background, but part of the information that could help predict weather, find safe paths, or locate essential resources. They learned that early humans had a profound awareness of their ecosystem, understanding that every element of nature was interconnected, and that accurate interpretation of natural signs could determine success or failure in daily activities. Beyond practical aspects, daytime activities were rich in symbolism. Children observed how certain movements, the placement of tools, or methods of gathering followed patterns with ritual or social meaning. These patterns taught them that early human life was not only about survival, but also about establishing order, a sense of security, and understanding the world through symbols that were repeated and observed collectively. They learned that this symbolism reinforced collective memory, instilled social values, and formed a foundation of rich experience for future generations. Observing natural phenomena and social interactions also taught adaptability. Children saw how adults responded to sudden changes, such as strong winds, light rain, or the movement of predator animals, quickly yet calmly. They learned that calmness and the ability to interpret natural signs accurately enabled early humans to make effective decisions, reduce risks, and maintain balance between practical needs and safety. This adaptability became part of life strategy passed down through observation, storytelling, and direct experience. Daytime activity also emphasized the importance of intergenerational connection. Children learned by watching, imitating, and asking questions, while adults guided subtly without force. They understood that collective knowledge was transmitted not only through words, but also through actions, symbols, and shared life rhythms. This learning process taught that early human life was a network of interconnected experiences, where every action, observation, and interpretation carried practical and symbolic meaning, complementing each other. In this ancient valley, the transition from morning rituals to daytime activity demonstrated a harmonious relationship between humans, nature, and symbolism. Children began to understand that early human life was not merely about meeting physical needs, but also about interpreting natural signs, building effective social communication, and internalizing profound symbolic meaning. They realized that the ability to read the environment, adapt, and interpret symbols was a crucial part of survival strategy, social learning, and the formation of collective memory to be passed down to future generations. As the midday sun reached its peak, piercing through the gaps in the ancient forest, early humans began to experience rare and mysterious natural phenomena. Children observed how adults responded to sudden changes, such as distant rumbling from the hills, flashes of light breaking through foliage, or the unusual movements of animals. These phenomena, though perplexing, were met with calmness and careful observation. Children learned that the ability to remain calm and observe attentively was key to understanding unusual natural signs and utilizing hidden information that could determine the safety of the group. Social interaction during these mysterious phenomena also demonstrated a high level of coordination. Children watched how adults exchanged glances, gestures, and actions with minimal words. They learned that nonverbal communication was crucial for coordinating steps, avoiding danger, and seizing sudden opportunities. Every group member played an active role in interpreting phenomena, sharing information, and adjusting actions according to rapidly changing conditions. Children realized that collective understanding of natural signs was a highly efficient and complex survival strategy. These rare natural phenomena also served as symbolic and ritual media. Children observed how adults used certain movements, body positions, or simple tools to express respect, gratitude, or acknowledgement of unseen forces. This symbolism, though seemingly simple, functioned to maintain psychological balance, strengthen social cohesion, and instill the understanding that nature held secrets to be respected. They learned that early humans interpreted mysterious phenomena not only as threats or practical opportunities, but also as messages connecting them to a larger, unseen world. Children's observation of these mysterious phenomena also highlighted the importance of intuition and experience. They saw how adults used collective memory, past experiences, and understanding of natural patterns to predict potential outcomes. Children learned that this ability was not merely instinctive, but the result of careful observation, repeated experience, and profound symbolic interpretation. They realized that early humans lived in a world full of uncertainty, and that the group, my success, depended on the ability to read natural signs and integrate them into daily actions. Furthermore, these mysterious phenomena became a means of emotional learning. Children witnessed how calmness, patience, attention to detail helped reduce anxiety, build confidence, and strengthen relationships among group members. They learned that facing mystery was not only about practical skills, but also about managing emotions, understanding personal limits, and appreciating the complexity of the surrounding world. This experience instilled an understanding that early humans developed a holistic life strategy, harmoniously combining physical, social, and symbolic aspects. Daytime activities also emphasize the collective value of symbolic experience and natural interpretation. Children learned that every observation, action, and interpretation, though seemingly simple, was part of a larger knowledge network. They understood that early humans interpreted mysterious phenomena as part of collective learning, where each group member contributed to survival strategies, symbolic knowledge, and understanding of the wider world. They realized that although the world was full of uncertainty, it had patterns and meanings that could be discovered through careful attention, observation, and wise collective interaction. In this ancient valley, a midday full of mysterious phenomena taught children about the complex relationship between humans, nature, and symbolism. They realized that early human life was not merely about physical survival, but also about interpreting phenomena, building social communication, and internalizing profound symbolic meaning. Children understood that the ability to read natural signs, cooperate within the group, and interpret mysterious symbolism was a crucial part of forming collective memory and sustainable life strategies. As the afternoon approached, with sunlight fading and tree shadows lengthening in the ancient valley, early humans entered a calmer phase of reflection. Children observed how adults paused from physical activities, sitting or standing in certain places, focusing their attention on the surrounding environment. The atmosphere was imbued with tranquility, where every movement, sound, and shift in light became material for observation and interpretation. They learned that the afternoon was a time to reorganize the day's experiences, understand natural signs, and embed symbolic meaning from the day's activities. Social interaction during the afternoon emphasized subtler layers of communication. Children observed how adults exchanged stories, recalled past experiences, or highlighted important lessons through actions, tone, or facial expressions. They learned that early human communication relied not only on words, but also on understanding body language, rhythm, and symbolism emerging from shared experiences. This process taught children that social learning involved observation, empathy, and the ability to interpret subtle cues from other group members. The natural phenomena of late afternoon added a rich, symbolic dimension. Children witnessed changes in sky colors, lengthening shadows, or different animal movements compared to morning and midday. Each phenomenon became part of collective reflection, with early humans interpreting them as signs or messages to be understood. Children learned that this symbolism strengthened the connection between humans and nature, and that every change, however small, contained information to navigate the environment, prepare for night, or understand the broader rhythms of life. Furthermore, the afternoon was a time for early humans to reinforce emotional and social understanding. Children saw how adults calmed themselves after exhausting activities, shared food, or showed care toward younger or older group members. They learned that these emotional experiences were not merely spontaneous reactions, but part of a life. Strategy that strengthened group cohesion, fostered a sense of security, and instilled social values crucial for sustaining communal life. This experience helped children internalize concepts of solidarity, patience, and respect for others and the environment. Afternoon reflection also involved observing simple symbols emerging from human nature interactions. Children noticed how the arrangement of stones, twigs, or simple tools followed patterns with ritual, respectful, or implicit instructional meaning. They learned that early humans used symbolism to connect physical, social, and spiritual experiences, making each action part of a broader knowledge network. This process instilled the understanding that early human life was holistic, where daily practices, observation, and symbolism worked together to form collective memory and survival strategies. In this ancient valley, the approaching afternoon was when children grasped the importance of harmony between physical activity, social communication, symbolic reflection, and emotional experience. They realized that early humans lived in a world full of meaning, where every movement, sound, or natural change carried layers of interpretable information. Children learned that the ability to read the environment, understand group members, and consistently interpret symbolism was part of forming memory, knowledge, and life strategies to be passed down to future generations. This quiet afternoon closed the chapter of early human activity with gentle calm. Children began to realize that every experience, however simple or routine, was rich with practical, social, and symbolic meaning. They understood that afternoon reflection was a crucial part of early human life, where collective experience, observation of nature, and social communication merged into a deeper understanding of the world and their existence within it. As dusk slowly descended upon the ancient valley and the sky faded into soft hues of orange and purple, early humans prepared to enter a night filled with mystery. Children observed how adults gathered the remnants of food, arranged simple dwellings made of wood and stone, and ensured that small fires remained lit to provide warmth and security. The tranquil afternoon shifted into a quietness imbued with gentle tension, where every movement had a purpose and every sound was carefully monitored. They learned that night was a phase in which precision, caution, and environmental awareness became more crucial, as darkness concealed many things unseen during the day. Social interaction at night carried even deeper symbolism. Children watched how adults reminded each other of tasks to complete, shared knowledge about resource locations, and adjusted group strategies to remain safe. They learned that collective coordination was key to maintaining safety, reinforcing cohesion, and ensuring the survival of the group. Every action had dual meaning, practical and symbolic, where simple rituals could calm, teach, and convey experiences accumulated over generations. Nighttime natural phenomena added an additional layer of mystery. Children observed the movement of stars, changes in moonlight, and sounds of nocturnal animals emerging from the darkness. These phenomena, though mysterious, were studied with curiosity and attentiveness. They learned that early humans interpreted the night as an opportunity to understand subtler rhythms of nature, recognize hidden patterns, and anticipate possible changes. Night was not only a time for rest, but also a phase of symbolic reflection, where experiences, observations, and collective knowledge were synthesized into a deeper understanding of the world and their existence. Collective symbolism became increasingly tangible as night arrived. Children witnessed how simple rituals, such as lighting fires, arranging stones, or placing leaves, were performed with great care and awareness of symbolic meaning. They learned that these actions not only provided physical safety, but also instilled calm, strengthened social bonds, and internalized understanding of natural and life order. This symbolism, though simple, served as a means for early humans to connect daily experiences with broader collective meaning. Observation of nocturnal phenomena also taught children patience, attentiveness, and introspection. They saw how adults were still, listening, and interpreting every sound, light, and movement carefully. Children learned that these skills involved a combination of careful observation, collective experience, and the ability to interpret symbols accurately. They realized that night was a time when the world seemed most mysterious, and that calmness, tension, and symbolic understanding allowed early humans to face uncertainty with preparedness and wisdom. Furthermore, night became a time for emotional and spiritual reflection. Children witnessed how awe controlled fear, and respect for nature and the group were integrated into their experiences. They learned that early humans lived in a delicate balance between practical needs, social communication, symbolism, and emotional experience. This experience instilled the understanding that early human life was holistic, where every action, interaction, and observation contributed to forming collective memory and survival strategies. In this darkening ancient valley, children began to understand that night was a time to unify physical, social, symbolic, and emotional experiences into a deeper collective awareness. They realized that early humans interpreted natural phenomena attentively, cooperated harmoniously, and respected existing symbolism, making daily life part of a subtle yet robust network of knowledge and strategy. Night, with all its mysteries, taught that calmness, observation, and symbolic understanding were integral to early human existence, preparing them for the following day and laying the foundation for collective memory to be passed down. The night grew deeper, stars began to twinkle in the dark sky, and the ancient valley appeared silent, as if closing its eyes alongside its inhabitants. Children, who had spent the day learning, observing, and interpreting the world, lay down near the small fire, gazing at the flickering light in the night air. The sounds of nature, from the rustle of leaves in the wind to the distant calls of nocturnal animals, became a gentle rhythm that soothed them, enveloping them in simple warmth. In that stillness, they felt that every day lived, every phenomenon observed, and every symbol understood was part of a larger story, whose beginning or end no one truly knew. They realized that early human life was not merely physical activity, but a network of interconnected experiences, memories passed through observation, movement, and symbols. Children sensed that every simple action, lighting a fire, arranging stones, placing leaves in a certain way, carried profound meaning, even if no one could fully explain it. There was a gentle awe and respect, a recognition that the world was vast, mysterious, and full of secrets to honor. In the silence, they learned that mystery was not something to fear, but something that calmed and invited attentive observation. The shadows of the fire danced across their faces, reflecting warm, soft light. And children began to understand that each generation would interpret symbols, experiences, and natural phenomena in their own way. They realized that collective knowledge was a living network where every interpretation, story, and observation contributed to memory that continuously evolved. Tonight, like nights before, did not need to be fully explained. It could simply be felt, observed, and accepted. The mystery remained, gentle, waiting to be explored tomorrow, and every observation became part of a long, endless journey. In this atmosphere, children fell asleep feeling safe and calm, surrounded by the sounds of nature, the flickering fire, and the warmth of their group. They felt that the world, though full of mystery and uncertainty, was also filled with subtle beauty and order. They understood that every day, every phenomenon, and every symbol was part of a larger story, connecting humans with nature, with time, and with each other. The stillness of night became a bridge between daily activity and deeper understanding, between practical and symbolic experience, between life and eternal collective memory. Before fully falling asleep, children let their minds wander among the shadows of trees, starlight, and gentle whispers of the wind. They learned that life is a journey full of meaning, where mysteries do not need answers, but should be appreciated and observed with gentle attention. Every moment, every movement, every symbol, whether simple or hidden, held stories waiting to be discovered. In their sleep, the ancient world remained alive in their imagination, and the small fire that burned bore witness to history in motion, mysteries waiting to be unveiled, and life flowing endlessly. Tonight, the ancient valley and its inhabitants remained wrapped in gentle mystery, where every star, every gust of wind, and every sound of nature was part of an endless story. Children, asleep in warmth and calm, carried with them the understanding that the world is vast, full of secrets, and beautiful in its uncertainty. The mystery of the night demanded no answers, only invited continued observation, reflection, and gentle immersion in the subtle, eternal, and never fully comprehended flow of life. In that silence, they found comfort, curiosity, and gentle awe, closing the day with a warmth that only a night full of mystery could provide.